Hey guys, I'm back with another suggestion video. This is the lengthy one, so I'm going to split it into two parts. Just like this a little bit. There we go. So it's called History is a Lie, part 1 obviously. This is about 37 minutes combined. So this video will be 18.5 for this one, for part 1, and then 18.5 for part 2. Because that's what, 37 divided by 2 is, so... Why does this feel like it's like off balance a little bit? Like, why is this like that? That's better. Okay. So again, I have no idea what to expect here, but it's all about history, which I'm not the best with history. I'm not really into history too much. Like, I feel like that's like not really my strongest subject, or ever really was like a big interest to me. But I mean, I guess we'll see what happens in this video. Let's go.
Come on, Greg. You can do this. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Same. Me.
This is going to be very different from anything I've ever made. Quick, somebody talk me out of this! Now I know that I promised I was going to make my own conspiracy theory video, but this really got out of hand on me. I've started off with just writing a script for a single video, laying out my new favorite conspiracy theory. Before I knew it, I'd gone full Charlie, laying out my own personal, grand, unified theory for all conspiracy theories that ever existed. Oh my god. Welcome to the Armored Conspiracy Files. Does that sound dumb? I'm keeping it. Please debate with each other in the comments section. I'm just trying to have some fun and thought you guys would have some fun too. The conspiracy theory that sort of got me started into the whole genre way back in the day was the Giza Plateau. The Great Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, the Sphinx, and of course dozens of other structures, tunnels, and sites. Based on everything that we know on the historical progression of mankind, there's no way the dynastic Egyptians could have built the Great Pyramid in the time period that history records, with the tools they had at their disposal, with the materials they built it with, in the amount of time.
The stones, the layers of the Great Pyramid, three-dimensionally locked into each other, and there are 2.3 million multi-ton limestone blocks. Academia says that it was likely constructed over the course of 25 years. If that's the case, you would have to cut, move, and fit into place one block every 2 minutes.
Not to mention how complex the design is, incorporating the golden ratio, incorporating the math for the dimensions of the Earth, including the distance of the Earth from the Sun. It's in the geographical center of the Earth, pointing due north. The Great Pyramid isn't four-sided, it's eight-sided. There's also the large granite blocks that are integrated to the interior of the pyramid that there's no way the dynastic Egyptians could have worked with.
Copper's just going to blunt on granite. I can't believe it's going to cut the stone.
We're going to put sand inside the groove, and we're going to put this saw on top of the sand, and then let the sand do the cutting.
Will we see any progress in our lifetime?
Yes, if you came back in an hour's time, you would see about a 4mm cut.
Sky went wonderful once we switched over to using water with the sand. As you can see here, we achieved this in just a few days.
And even if they did cut them like that, that doesn't explain how the blocks fit so flush with each other. You can't even fit a piece of paper or a needle between them. Go right next door to the Sphinx. Not only is the body of the Sphinx far more eroded than the head, suggesting that the head was actually recarved at a later date, but the walls around the Sphinx display advanced water erosion. Egyptologists believe that the Sphinx is between 3,000 and 5,000 years old. However, some geologists have suggested that the water erosion would require hundreds of years of sustained rainfall, and the last time Egypt had a climate that would explain something like that was between 10 and 20,000 years ago, meaning that the Great Sphinx is at least 12,000 years old. And it was when I heard about all this that I became forever addicted to unraveling the mysteries of ancient human history and trying to piece together a new timeline that actually explains everything that we see with our own eyes.
Armoured Skeptic. Alright then.
The first time I heard about the water erosion around the Sphinx, I was only about 12 or 13 years old, but I remember it vividly. The people who presented the theory were mocked and ridiculed, And the fallout from the debate forced a spotlight onto an uncomfortable and major flaw in the archaeological community: their refusal to accept evidence that doesn't fit the accepted historical paradigm. But a lot has happened since the 90s, and our paradigm has shifted quite a bit, mainly because of the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, a pre-Neolithic civilization that predates the oldest known civilization, Sumeria, by around 7,000 years. Most people recognize Graham Hancock. He's basically the face of lost ancient history. I'm not really a huge fan, but I can't deny what he's done for the field. However, he and a few others in the field seem stuck, quite ironically, on an old, unflexible paradigm themselves. Also, John Anthony West, concerned with unpacking this lost civilization and solving the riddle of the Sphinx. And then there's Brian Forster. He's the one that woke me up to the fact that many megalithic sites have amazing stonework that we can't explain, but on top of that amazing stonework, there's terrible stonework that the world's shittiest mason wouldn't put his name on today. There's more to it than that, that's an oversimplification, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that a lot of these sites, like the ones in Peru, were actually built a long time ago, then abandoned for some time, and then reoccupied later by the Maya and the Inca. And the Maya and the Inca even have stories themselves about how their cities were built by the gods. For example, this wall has extremely complicated cuts in the stone. Each stone is wedged so tightly together that you can't fit a piece of paper between. But behind the surface, the stones appear to have been melted into each other like Play-Doh. These design features make the wall almost earthquake-proof. Not that I ever took it too seriously, but I always followed research on the idea of Atlantis, the concept of this ancient advanced civilization that was wiped away by a flood, and we keep finding these hints. Later I'd find out about the Younger Dryas period, a time about 12,000 years ago when the North Pole suddenly melted and then refroze, and at the same time there's a noticeable rise and lowering of sea level, and the extinction of a good deal of megafauna in North America. That is, I didn't take this too seriously until just recently there was discovered a comet impact crater in southern Greenland from 12,000 years ago. When that baby hit, it would have vaporized a good deal of the ice cap that would have rained down on the Earth for months, and because of its close proximity to the Arctic Ocean, that impact would have caused a massive tsunami that would have wiped across a good deal of the northern hemisphere. Together, those two effects would have made it seem as if there was a massive global flood. This helped to explain some of the impressive carvings that we found at Göbekli Tepe, which seems to depict the story of a great comet. Comets have always been considered bad omens throughout history, and perhaps that's because collectively we have a historical memory of this major impact event. So, if this is true and we've unlocked Atlantis, and we've managed to prove that they were more advanced than later civilizations, does that mean that they were completely wiped away by the flood, or did some of their knowledge survive? And why do the Freemasons and countless other occult groups venerate the pyramid? Do they know what it means? So that got me thinking, if the Inca and the Maya could end up occupying cities that they themselves didn't build, but history would record it as if they did, do you think the same thing could happen to us? But I didn't just find patterns with the building layouts. I found entire themes that survived from Egypt all the way to the Victorian era. And I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of the major architectural styles that existed between those two eras are actually tied together. So that means this whole thing ties into the Notre Dame spire. Notre Dame was built with all the same principles as the Giza Plateau and served the same function. And now, with the spire gone, it no longer does function. Whoa, what am I saying? You're talking crazy, Greg. And if I'm right, which I probably am, this'll destroy everything you know about human history and who we were before the Victorian era. This is one of the temple structures in Royal Palace Park, Cambodia. What you're seeing and what you're hearing, as far as I know, is not real.
pretty
All
loud
the
and seems real
sources
to
of
me.
this video lead to a single Flat Earth YouTube account, and the owner of that account told me that he doesn't remember where he got it. But let's look at this as a proof of concept. In theory, what the creator wants to convey is that atmospheric energy is being collected by a fractal antenna on the roof of the building, and that the reaction is causing an audible resonance. Those balls of light that are floating around are supposed to be plasma. This, theoretically, is a free energy device that's been integrated into an old building. And this seems kind of silly, but there's people out there who believe that this kind of technology not only existed back then, but has existed all throughout human history. And through the majority of human history have been integrating this technology into their buildings all across the world, until all knowledge of this history was erased 200 years ago. The Illuminati has apparently accomplished this by capitalizing on massive natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and mudslides, and then just cleaned up the mess and made up a story about a plague or a war to explain all the bodies, and fake fires to explain all the missing buildings. They then collect and reuse the old masonry to build the next civilization.
Yeah, I'm so lost. This is kind of boring to me. I don't know what to say about this at all.
Free for the taking. Just any old mason could just take this for free. Just all this free masonry lying around. You know what I'm saying? History tells us that this is a photo of a destroyed city after a Civil War battle. But what if this is an old abandoned city that was destroyed by an earthquake and fire, or a solar flare, or some other natural disaster? What if they just found the city like this, and then rebuilt it, and called it their own? What else seems to stick out about these older buildings in these historic towns is that they seem to be slightly buried into the earth, and a little bit more than what you'd expect from just natural sediment over time. As if mud had just flowed into the city and filled in the lower levels of all these buildings. And that brings me to the name of this conspiracy theory. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to the Mud Flood. Ever since high school, I've been obsessed with history. Why history? I don't know. Just always absorbed it like a sponge. Straight out of high school, I ended up taking a summer job as a tour bus operator, and that was perfect because Kingston, my hometown, is actually a historic city with French settlers dating back to about 1673, and that helped me really carve my teeth on my knowledge from around that era to about 1850. That was around the time that all the interesting stuff happened in Kingston. Nothing's really happened since then. Oh, a waiter here was the first Canadian Idol. So, yeah. And now I know Kingston like the back of my hand. The tourism industry reigns supreme here, and as my role as a tour operator, I ended up getting to access parts of the city that most people don't even know exist. It turns out that I am actually uniquely qualified to discuss the mud flood conspiracy theory because most of the structures they discuss date between the 16 and 1800s. And they share features with several structures here in Kingston. There's a lot of different concepts that the mud flood theory tries to incorporate. Some of the stuff I've just completely stayed away from because it just seems like nonsense. But I'm going to go through as many of the more interesting and more plausible theories as I can in this video. But this series is inevitably going to grow because there are several subjects that I want to make an entire video just focusing on. Yes, they all realize that most buildings have basement windows, but even then, decorative features such as arches are buried under the earth, and nobody would design a building like that. The conspiracy theory community uses the term mud flood, but that could mean several things. Landslides, mud volcanoes, yes, that's a thing, and a powerful enough earthquake can shake the soil to the point where it liquefies. I suppose we have to consider the possibility that that's sediment that's been built up over time, but cities get buried under the earth all the time. Now, nobody in the mud flood community can seem to agree on whether or not there were several mud floods or just one, and if they all happened at the same time around the world, but the mud flooders present some pretty compelling evidence that almost every single one of these cities has been buried under at least one story of mud, and that there is no record of this happening. And this is all around the world. Russia, France, England, Japan, China, Singapore, Australia, Turkey, India, South America, Mexico, United States, Canada. It's common knowledge that Rome was buried under feet of earth. Egypt was buried, of course. Using this logic, I went around my hometown to see if I noticed the same thing. And you know what? I did. In fact, almost every single feature these mud flood cities have resemble Kingston, Ontario. Most original structures that stand today date between 1830 and 1850. There's a big mess though, because before the Kingston Heritage Committee was created, they would just level buildings indiscriminately. Now you have to do an archaeological dig every single time you want to build something downtown, and every single time they end up finding foundations for older structures. One thing mud flooders will do is they'll start throwing photos at you of just random people excavating mud. Some of them, completely out of context, makes it seem like maybe they're just digging out a buried city. But others, you can't really deny that that's what they're doing. Here's an anomaly for you in Omaha. This is St. Mary Magdalene Church. The city apparently decided to regrade the streets and level out all of the steep hills. So people started digging out the church, and after they finished excavating it, they discovered that 2 stories of the structure were submerged under the earth. Do you see where these faux pillars flare out at the bottom? This is an indication of where the ground level should be. And you see this side? All these beautiful arched windows? Okay, well, this one's actually an easy debunk. An article in the Omaha World Herald says that during the street grading, they hired a contractor to build the bottom story and the foundation area. However, I will admit that it's very strange that they would build a brick foundation for such a tall, heavy structure that's obviously built on soil instead of bedrock, but I'm no building expert. And some of these depictions show grand structures that either seem to be in the middle of nowhere or have no landscaping around them at all. Then there's these photos of cities like the Vatican, where the entire city is completely empty. Yeah, maybe they evacuated the city just to get these pristine shots. If they went through all the trouble to evacuate the entire city, you think that they could have asked this guy to get out of the shot, maybe? It's a little bit awkward that he's just standing there. Oh yeah, you got these vagrants hanging out by the statue over here? Hey guys, get the f*** out of the shot, you're ruining it! It almost looks like they're taking a photo of the Vatican to show off what it looks like right before they fill it with the next civilization. I want to ask yourself a question. If there's no people in the city, then who took the photo? These should be bustling cities. How do you build up these giant cities if there's no people in them? I mean, this seemed to have been a global event, right? Surely there'd be some sort of record of this happening. But instead, there are stories like this. The downtown of the city of Chattanooga is a floodplain, and apparently used to flood regularly in the 19th century. This apparently is not so much of an issue anymore, mainly because the street level of the entire downtown was raised. The problem with this is that nobody knows when this street raising was done, where it was done, or how.
I don't know exactly when this happened because there are, to my knowledge, no firm records that would objectively show, hey, here's what we did when we did it. But most people have said this was done sometime in the late 1880s.
But the mud flooders are not so sure about the 1880s theory. A handful of photos have survived from the region that predate that time.
The fact that this is matched by another window on the other side and there's a door in the middle just tells you that this most likely was an entryway to a business.
This guy goes on to show that a retaining wall was built on the outside of the structure, theoretically so that they could add the fill on the other side. However, I also found an old photo of Chattanooga that shows retaining walls used to stop water from entering the building. So I don't really know what to make of this.
You can see some of the tops of arched windowways that you wouldn't put in at the street level now. Someone has said, well, could those have been coal bins? But you wouldn't have had 6 of them in the same building.
Chattanooga's not the only one in the world. Hell, Chattanooga's not the only one in the United States. It's basically the exact same story in Leavenworth.
Now this is downtown Leavenworth, but below my feet, there's an underground mystery down here that not a lot of people know about or can tell us.
I love how it just stops me right before it tells me about a mystery underground. I love how it stops me right there. That's like exactly where I split the video to make it exactly half and half. So that was the first 18.5 minutes. There's still 18.5 left of this video. So I'm not gonna lie, that was interesting a little bit, but like I'm not gonna lie, during the first little bit I was kind of like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be listening to here. Because I don't know what the point of the video was. Like, let me look at this whole video up again and just like look in the description or something. Maybe I got like a little, because no one reads descriptions anymore, right? So I'm trying to see. There's nothing really. Yeah, there's nothing really on the thingy, like in the description about what it is. So I'm not too sure what to really expect here, but I'm just assuming it's like something about like history, maybe like maybe history's lying to us, or maybe people made stuff up to make it like put as history, but it's not actually like real or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know. So like apparently history is a lie to this guy, but that was part 1 of History is a Lie. I'm actually really curious to watch part 2 now, just because I really want to see what happened underneath there. So in a way, I'm kind of excited for the last 18.5 minutes. You guys will have to wait a few days until that video comes out. And I'm going to film other videos prior to that one, so just heads up there. But, yeah, it ought to be interesting. It ought to be interesting. If you have any other suggestions, let me know. Oh, and please be sure, like, if you guys have any, like, suggestion videos, like, for example, anonymous to react to, just, like, maybe if you want me to do covers, or if you want me to do a challenge, or a vlog, and, like, you know, like, tell me what you want me to do, because I really am trying to grow my channel, and it definitely is, like, taking a little bit, and, like, I know some YouTubers explode, which I really doubt that'll happen to me. But, like, if you guys have any, like, suggestions of, like, you want me to do a cover, you want me to do a challenge of some sort, like one by myself, because I don't want to like hang out with friends at the moment because, you know, the COVID-19 thing, but you know what I mean, like if you have any like challenges that you want me to do, or any kind of like things you want me to like attempt to do, as long as it's not like dangerous or anything, then of course I'll gladly do it, you know what I mean? Just like if you have any like suggestions like that, please be sure to let me know, and hopefully I'll be able to do it, and then if I do it, then yeah, I do it. That's gonna be it though. Please be sure to subscribe, be sure to comment down below once again what you thought out of this part 1 video. And yeah, part 2 shall come in a few days. If you guys are still here at this point, then you guys are watching. Thanks for being a true fan, and yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace out.